You're welcome to do. I was like, are we waiting on me?
You're waiting for 5:30.
Do you have any?
We have 3 that won't be here. So everybody that's here is here. There you go.
Very good.
Well, welcome everybody here to our joint session, which is fun. We do it once a year. I think we're just turning it over to Mr. Brierly. You want to do introduction?
It's kind of nice. I think we have some new staff in the back and
Okay, let's do it. Where do we want to start? We'll start in the back row.
sure, why not?
Do I start?
Yeah.
All right. What am I telling them? Is my name?
And maybe which department?
Remember asking.
All right. So my name's Alyssa Gerardo. I'm one of the planners. Mark Hay Mertensen. I'm an administrative assistant.
And I am Haley Hale and I'm a planner.
I'm Joe Simpson, and I too am a planner.
Damian Rodriguez, city planner.
Jeremy Shinoda, planning commissioner.
Dave Graff, planning commissioner. I think everybody's got a microphone now.
I don't think yours is on. There you go.
I'm gonna press the button.
Jordan Aberg, planning commissioner.
Ben Nadolski, council member.
Angela Chaburka, city council.
Ken Ritchie, City Council.
Brandon Rippian, planning.
James Tanner, assistant city attorney.
Martin Brierly, planning manager.
Glenn Symes, policy analyst in the council office.
Bart Blair, council.
Richard Iyer, council.
Kathy Blaisdell, Planning Commission.
Jenny Sandow, Planning Commission.
Mandy Shale, planning commission.
Mind going back to Mara real quick?
Thank you, Mara Brown, Chief Administrative Officer for Ogden City. And I did want to come mostly to thank our planning commissioners for your volunteer service with the city, and we really appreciate all that you do. So I wanted to come say hello. I don't often get to visit you on a Wednesday, so thank you very much for your service here. And then I'm going to stay for a little bit, and then I have another meeting, but thank you very much.
I'm Janine Eller-Smith. I'm the Executive Director for the City Council.
Oh, yes. I'm Brandon Garside. I'm the communications manager for the council.
Eric Davenport, Communications for the Council Office.
Me? No.
Yeah, go ahead, Marcia, go ahead.
Marsh White Council.
Leanne Peterson, recorder's office.
I know, she kind of sits over there and I won't be inconspicuous.
Well, it's good to have everybody here, and we are here to be trained. Looks like we've got 4 people on our docket, so let's turn it over to the first name, Mr. Brierly. Okay.
Well, thank you, and thank you for taking an evening to learn about land use planning. Is something that we're all passionate about, and so we appreciate you coming and learning, and hope that you'll be passionate about it too. So we have 4 people that'll be doing your training tonight, and I just put this up on the board. We have 3 of us are AICP certified, and the other one's an attorney. So you got a really well-qualified group here. So AICP is the American Institute of Certified Planners. So it's a national organization, and it has the minimum requirements to join and to maintain your certification. So, and it has a set of ethical standards that you have to follow too. So I think you ought to be happy that your city has invested a lot in your staff resources to be able to provide training for you today. So last year when we did this training, we were starting the development code update. And so we gave some presentations on what are development codes. And now we're starting the general plan update. So we thought this would be an opportunity to teach some of the basic laws and principles of what is a general plan. So we're not talking about the specific update, but we want to give you some background on just what is a general plan, what it includes, and how it's used. So to start with, cities in Utah are required to have a general plan. And this is what the Utah Code says about a general plan. Every city has to adopt one. And the general plan, some of the specific words here, it says that a general plan is comprehensive. So one of the big things of a general plan is it looks at everything that you do as a city and combines that all so that you have a good picture of how everything works together. This is a little cartoon that you may or may not have seen this before, just on the sort of rope swing and how different disciplines might look at.
I don't think that's very nice to contract.
It's nice to our attorneys. We love our attorneys too. So, but yeah, this isn't intending to really be a dig at anybody, but it's just a point of a general plan. Sometimes when you're focused on one thing, you don't see the whole picture. And the general plan is a chance to look at the whole picture. So if you decide, hey, we want to create a new neighborhood here, it wants you to look at the whole picture. Okay, how does that neighborhood function with the rest of the city? How are we going to provide roads to it, or transportation? How are there going to be places for people to walk to? Is there going to be parks? Are there going to be schools, or places for them to shop? What are the water demands on that area? Can we provide sewer? What kind of housing will be there? What kind of businesses will be there? How will this promote the general economy? So, and then you have trade-offs. Like if you decide, hey, we want this kind of development, does that mean you're precluding this other kind? And do we have enough for all those kinds? And what are our needs? So it's an opportunity to really look at the whole picture of your growth and development of the city. So it's a really great opportunity, and we're really grateful for the council to be able to fund this next update. The other thing about a general plan is it's long range. So it's not talking about what's going to happen next year or in the next 2 years. It's really looking down the road. And the state statutes doesn't put any timeline on it. A good rule of thumb in the planning industry is about 20 years is a good timeline for a general plan. It can be shorter, it can be longer. You can often just peg it to like a decennial census, so it might be a 2040 plan or a 2050 plan or things like that. But you get to decide the length, but it's not a short-term plan. And it is to look at the present and future needs of the city. And it is also focuses on growth and development of land. So general plans focus on land use. So you can have lots of other plans and they can be incorporated into your general plan, but the really focus is always on land use. So, last night we talked about a sustainability plan. Sustainability can be how a city operates. What kind of vehicles do we use? How do we heat our buildings? Things like that can be a part of a city sustainability plan. Those things usually aren't part of a general plan. They can be incorporated. So, but a general plan looks more at land use. So, and a lot of focus is on private land use. It does include public land use, but it might look at, okay, if we do a development in this area, how can we make it so that people can get there easily, so we're not using as much energy on a sustainability plan or things like that. You might have a plan about how to provide better emergency services. Those sorts of things often are only touched on briefly in a general plan. So the general plan is really about zoning, what's future zoning, what's future land use, how are we going to use buildings, what's going to show up on a map. There are various types of plans that we do. A general plan is really the foundation for all other plans. It's the base of everything else. We do have other plans that build on top of that. You can have a community plan. And we have about 19 community plans that we have. Some jurisdictions will call them specific plans or neighborhood plans, but it's or district plans for a specific area. You can have a corridor plan, which is, how do we want Washington Boulevard to look and function, or Wall Avenue, or 21st Street. And then we have master plans. Master plans, we usually think about those as city facilities. That term can be used in a lot of different ways, but typically it's things like the city parks, or the city transportation plan, or the storm drain master plan, or the sewer master plan, or the water master plan, or plan for development of specific city properties, things like that. Yes.
Just
You
turn
bet.
On your mic.
Sure. Now, can you talk about the relationship between our general plans, community plans, all these plans you're talking about, and ordinance? I mean, we understand the general plan really has no force of law, but I think everybody intends it to when you do one.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk about that some?
We will, and that's
coming up. Okay.
Miss James will address that in just a moment here. He's the next part, and the next part was oops. Was your ordinances. And so your ordinances really should build off of your plan. They should be directed towards accomplishing the goals that you have in there. And that can be the zoning ordinance, subdivision ordinance, sign ordinance, landmarks ordinance. So really the foundation of all those, you should set your goals in the general plan, saying, hey, we want buildings that reflect an Ogden style. We want development of housing that's affordable to people. We want businesses that'll attract, bring in employment and help the economy, the local economy, and all those things. And then your ordinances should implement that. Okay, we're going to zone this area for these kinds of businesses. We're going to zone these areas for this kind of housing that we decided we want. We're going to make development standards that make the kind of look we want. So all your ordinances really should be based on your general plan. Let me zip ahead to James's part of your. Sure. Well, since we asked the question.
I don't mean to disturb your.
Oh, no, you're good.
I'm inherently asking the question that you're going to answer next.
Okay. There. Turn it over to James.
Like Barton mentioned when he first opened, if a city or a county wants to perform any type of land use controls, you are required to have a general plan. But what does having a general plan really mean? Because a general plan really it's the comprehensive view of the city, what you want the city to become. So it's really advisory in nature. You can technically, by statute, make the general plan mandatory. It just makes things a lot messier since there's a whole bunch of squishy language in general plans that it's really hard to enforce. Now, with the discretionary nature of the general plan, the advisory nature, that's only advisory to the general public, not so much to the city, since the state has decided that if you're gonna create a general plan, you're gonna have to live by it. And so anything that we do with it, whether it's, we create a new public utility, design a road, a park, a new public building, a public way, it has to be consistent with the general plan. And that's both found in state code and city code. Yeah, and this is what I was just mentioning. The public uses have to conform to the general plan. Now, the planning commission, we can steer somewhat to make sure that any kind of a development is not going completely off target. I mean, obviously, we don't want to have a M2 zone type development in one of our R1s. That's just not compatible. But again, it's still more of an advisory document in nature. You want me to say any more about anything about that?
Short part. You got the short part, so.
I'll just add one. What he had just mentioned there is the reason that both the planning commission and the city council look at the capital improvement plan. So the capital improvement plan is our own plan for our own facilities and infrastructure, and that law and what James had just mentioned requires that plan to be consistent, or the capital improvements to be consistent with the general plan. So that's why you all as planning commissioners look at that in addition to the council as a policy document. So if you ever wondered why you guys get to look at that very long document.
All right, I think I have the most slides tonight, so I'll try to cruise through it pretty quick. So I was asked to talk about what is in a general plan. So most general plans include the general plan document, which has several elements that are part of the overall comprehensive general plan. So those can include transportation, land use, housing. They should include moderate income housing plan, public facilities. So there are a lot of different elements that are part of a general plan. And they should also include a future land use map that kind of paints the picture of what the city wants to become in the future. So in order to create the future land use map, cities should go through a scenario-based planning process. And at the beginning of this process, the city should reach out to stakeholders and citizens and find out, what are the values that the citizens and stakeholders have, what's important to them. And that is where you start to build your scenarios. Is affordable housing important, or is it important for someone to have open space near their home? So those are the types of questions that we would ask. And so then we would start to generate different scenarios that meet those goals.
Can I ask just a broad
You
question
bet.
about that? So we kind of talked about the hierarchy of planning, but we have a general plan that's X amount of years old, and then we have
Mhm.
community plans that have been developed since then. So how did they fall into this? We don't really want to have to go back to those stakeholder groups again so soon. Like I'm thinking about Southeast area, right? That we just
Right.
did their community plan,
Yeah.
so-
Well, so when we go through the overall comprehensive process, there may be items that we'll have to update in the comprehensive or in the individual community plans if they are not in line with the comprehensive general plan.
I see what you're saying.
I don't know that we'd necessarily have to do an public process because we're aligning the community plans with the future land use plan and the comprehensive plan. So we would kind of have to figure that out when we get there, but my thoughts are that we would have gone through a public process to adopt the comprehensive general plan, and then we would update the community plans to match that. So any thoughts on that?
I would expect, and you guys are obviously going to be doing all the work, but I would expect that those more recent plans are going to be much more reflective of what the community wants anyway. So I think as
Right.
you all go through the general plan redesign, you're going to take a lot of that, especially these more recent plans, and plug that in. And so it's not a total tear down and rebuild. I think those things will be very informative to the new general plan.
Oh,
So
right, absolutely. Thanks.
And I'll add that, what the good thing about the general plans, we look at what's the needs for the community as a whole. Because we might, like, this particular neighborhood might have said, well, we want all large lots. But as a community, we might say, well, we want more ownership housing. And to get more ownership housing, we need smaller lots. And so we might have to go back to that neighborhood and say, well, maybe we need to look at some changes in your neighborhood plan.
Awesome. Thank you. So when we go through the scenario-based planning process, as I said, we come up with different scenarios of how the city could grow. Typically, there are at least 3 scenarios plus the baseline that we would produce. And then we would evaluate, how do each of these scenarios accomplish the goals that we have as a city. So we would ask questions. One of the questions I have here is, how important is it, or is reasonably priced housing for our children and the workforce? So that could be a question. So through these scenarios, we would ask specific questions, and then we would find out, what's priority to the citizens and stakeholders. So that's where we make those hard decisions. So through that process, we also come up with guiding principles, and that is what guides the general plan. The visioning exercise, typically you'll come out on the end with a preferred scenario, which then becomes your vision map. And then with the vision map, you'll have those guiding principles that are part of that. From the preferred scenario or the vision map, that is where we would come up with our future land use map. So you can kind of see the relationship between the vision map and the general plan map. There will be some variations, but it's fairly similar. So what is in a future land use map? So there are a variety of items that you can include in a future land use map. So the one on the left-hand side, that's a map that's taken from the Ogden, Involve Ogden general plan. And then the one on the right is from Layton's general plan update. So the difference between the two, the Ogden plan concentrates more on centers and then growth areas, whereas the one on the right, it kind of dials in a little bit further on land use and transportation, as well as open space, and then employment centers. So there you can include more or less. It kind of just depends on what you want to display or how you want to paint the picture. And then some general plans also include area specific maps. So if there's a specific area that you really want to have, you want to show what's planned for open space, transportation, housing, how it links to the surrounding area. So there may be some areas in the general plan map that we want to dial in a little bit further. But we do want to be careful and limited as far as how many of these we look at building. So the future land use map, and someone talked about ordinances. So the future land use map is not the zoning map. So a future land use map talks about general land uses. So talks about commercial, industrial, talks about residential. It guides the city as it grows, but it is not the zoning map. So the zoning map hopefully eventually will be similar to the general plan map, but the future land use map, but it is different than the zoning map. So as part of the general plan update, so we do intend to do a large community engagement where we will come up with the citywide vision. We'll produce different scenarios, and we'll talk about what the goals of the general plan are and what we need to do to accomplish the plan. So as part of the general plan, so one of the first portions of the general plan will be the community profile, population and demographics forecast. So and we will need to know some of that information before we start doing the scenario planning, because we will want to know, okay, what's our future population? So in one estimate I saw for 2050, and actually that wasn't based on census population estimate. That was a different one, so I apologize. But it showed 117,000. So by 2050, the estimate would be to add 30,000 people to Ogden. So where are we gonna put those people? Where is the housing that we're gonna provide for them? And where are the jobs? So those are the questions we need to ask when we're going through that scenario-based planning process is, yeah, how do we want to grow as a city? We'll also look at demographics. You know, what is the age of our population? Do we have a young population or are we aging as a community? And that will determine what types of housing we're looking to build in the future. We'll look at community identity. So what do we want to be when we grow up? So we are a built out city, but we are redeveloping. We're kind of becoming a new city in a sense. And I put this on there. I said, we're putting Ogden back on the map. So I feel like Ogden has a good momentum and is creating a good reputation for itself. So we'll keep up the good work. The land use element is also part of the general plan. So we would evaluate the existing land uses. We want to know, you know, how much property we have zoned for residential, how much property do we have for commercial? Do we need to have more property for commercial to increase our tax base? Or do we need more property zoned for residential to provide more housing? And also as part of the land use element, the state requires that we have station area plans for our front runner station and then for 4 of our bus rapid transit stations. So that is that would be part of the land use element. The next element is the housing and residential element. And so we would evaluate, you know, what is our housing stock? How many detached single family homes do we have? How many apartments do we have? Do we have a healthy stock of each of those land uses? So those are the things that we would look at. We want to think about how do we encourage more home ownership. That's something that we talked a lot about. And are there areas that we want to encourage high density housing? You know, around the front runner station, that's probably an area that we would be comfortable with higher density housing. But the future land use map will help us designate those areas. So when someone comes in and says, you know, we are looking to build some apartments, where would you encourage us to look? We can look on the map and say, this is where we feel comfortable with higher density housing. Or maybe it's an area that we want to preserve for single family. So and then so as part of the housing and residential element, we're also required to have the moderate income housing plan. And that is part of the state requirement. So that will be included in the update. Economy and commercial and industrial land element. So Urban 3 did a study, was it in 2020? Or maybe it was prior to that, 2019. So they looked at the different land uses throughout Ogden and specifically in the downtown area and evaluated, you know, what is the value per acre that Ogden has within its city boundaries. And the reason that's important is we have to pay for things like building new or maintaining roads, building new roads, providing sewer, all of those public services. So it's important as a city to look at, you know, how are we bring in income so that we can provide those quality services. So one of the things we would look at is, you know, is there a way that we can increase the value per acre of the property that is within Ogden City? And I think we are doing a good job, especially with the Make Ogden plan, which focuses on this concept of increasing the value of land within the city. So with the economic element, we would want to look at, you know, do we need more employment centers, or should we preserve properties so that we can provide family sustaining jobs, or do we need more commercial land as our population grows? We may be supplying enough commercial now for the population that we have, but as we grow, if we, get up to adding 30,000 more residents, we may have more need for more commercial. And we want to be sustainable as a city. So we will look at the economic sustainability. And one of the requirements that we will have from the consultant is to do an economic forecast to help us understand, how will we be able to provide for our community in the future as we grow.
Right, and can I,
Yeah, you bet.
back you up just a little bit? You said that, when a developer comes in and we want to build some apartments, and where can we do that? How often does that happen as opposed to, oh, we bought this piece of property and we gotta have it rezoned? I mean, that seems like that's what's happening most of the time.
have
The
Barton answer
latter
that.
happens about every day. The former happens about once a week.
Okay. And I guess that's what I kind of get myself kind of balled up over.
Mhm.
I wish we would have, our plan was a little more adhered to rather than reacted to.
Right.
You know.
Well, and part of that is because of the age of the plan.
Partly, sir.
Right.
Sure, certainly. And that's kind of why I really like these combined meetings with planning commission, because you guys are the gatekeepers on those things. You guys get it first.
Yeah.
And if you find yourself being reactive, then we kind of keep fall down that rabbit hole. Where if plan means more, then you say, well, you know what, the plan is pretty well worked out.
Mhm.
That's what we ought to adhere to, and not try to just. play
Yeah,
big
that's the goal,
developers all the time.
definitely.
That's an attitude, I think, more than it is anything else. But I just wondered how often that happens.
You're right. Okay.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, just as an example, today I got an inquiry from a developer says, hey, I just bought this piece of land. I want to rezone it to do apartments there. And I looked at the community plan and it was really well thought out about how they needed commercial service in that area and for walkable service. And it's like, oh, that was a well thought out plan. So no, we're probably not going to support your change. But that was the value of having the plan in the first place. You could say that makes sense.
Thank you. I'm sorry to back you up.
No, that's great. Yeah, good question. So moving on, so Parks and Recreation, and open space element. So we actually updated the Parks and Recreation and open space plan recently in 2019. So there may not be a lot that we need to update on this, but one of the things we'll want to consider is, as the population grows, do we have enough open space in our portfolio right now to provide for the new population, or are there areas that we need to improve? Do we need to add any open space or plaza space in our downtown area? Just because, or based on new development. So those are some things we want to look at. We want to also consider, how do we maintain it? So not only we'll think about how we're adding new open space, but do we have staff to maintain it? And I think that's something that a lot of cities don't do very well at. So that's something that we would definitely want to consider. And where would these open spaces be located? The transportation element. This one has a lot of different parts to it. So when someone thinks about transportation, a lot of times they think about streets, but streets aren't the only thing that should be considered in the transportation element. You have transit, you have your bike lanes or bike infrastructure, you have walking. That should also be part of your transportation element. So as we look at this, we'll want to think, are there any streets that need to be extended? Is there a street that needs to be added? Do we need to consider all types of transportation. So I think that's, those are some questions that we would need to ask. And should we encourage one over the other? Do we want to become a more walkable city? Well, in some instances, that would mean that we're making it so that people don't have to necessarily own a vehicle. So those types of things. Public facilities and services. So Barton touched upon this.
Brandon, hey,
Yes.
sorry. Don't mean to, it's always awkward to be out here, but, so I think one of the things, and I'd like to really, you know, at Wasatch Front Regional Council, we talk a lot about access to opportunity. So whether that's access to, you know, healthcare or education or childcare or groceries or pharmacies, you know, creating those city and town centers is really important to a city. And so I just, you know, I guess I'm trying to, every time I get a chance, I want to throw access to opportunity in there.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that really increases the walkability of an area. So thank you. So public facilities and services, obviously, as the population grows, we need to think about what is our capacity as a city. Can we provide sewer? Can we provide water? Do we have capacity on our streets to add, you know, thousands more or thousands of vehicles? So those are the things we need to consider. A lot of times the planning division will work with the engineering division to make sure that the future land use map is a real reality that can be developed. The worst thing would be to adopt a plan that isn't able to you know, be provided for. So we definitely want to look at our public facilities and make sure that we're able to accomplish what we are proposing. And the state also requires a water use and preservation element as part of the general plan. So that's something that we'll put together. We do have a water preservation plan that was recently completed, and that will be folded into the water use and preservation element. And let's see, I have a couple more. So natural resources and historic resources and environmental element. So those are things that we want to, what are the things that we want to preserve? What makes Ogden different than other places? And what can we do to preserve the things that make Ogden unique? What can we do to preserve them in the future? Natural hazards. So we live along the Wasatch Front, and so this is something that we always have to consider. We also have two major rivers that flow through Ogden, so flooding is also something that we have to be aware of. So as we look at the natural hazards element, we want to think about, you know, how can we protect areas along the river, or, you know, what are areas that should be protected that are, you know, may have fault lines or other potential issues because of sensitive lands. We also deal with liquefaction. That's something that we have to consider. Yeah. So these are things that we need to consider and what we want to protect and how we want to prepare for, you know, natural disasters, or how do we reduce the impact of a natural disaster? All right, we're almost through. So community, district, and corridor plans. So Barton talked about kind of the hierarchy of how those plans function. So we do have 14 community plans, and as we look at updating the general plan, we want to consider, you know, are there opportunities to consolidate any of those plans? Does the future land use map take the place of the community plans? Or how should we integrate the community plans and update those into the general plan? So those are questions that we have, but we do want to integrate all of those district plans, corridor plans, and community plans into the general plan so that they're easy to find. And even for planners that are doing reviews on a specific area, it would be really helpful to have those all in one location that you can search and find everything that applies. Because right now it's somewhat difficult to figure out, you know, oh, this master plan, the transportation master plan talks about this area. So then you have to go to the transportation master plan, and then you have to say, oh, well, it's also in the 9 Rails district. Okay, I need to go to the 9 Rails district. So putting these all in one document will really be helpful as far as making it searchable. So as I said, we may want to consider some consolidation of community plans. I'm not saying that that is what we should do, but that's something we could consider. Salt Lake City, they have 11 neighborhood plans and they have 110 square miles within their city boundary. We have 14 community plans, 4 district plans, and 5 corridor plans, and we are about a quarter of the size. So that's just something to consider.
We're very untamed.
Yes, untamed. So that just kind of put it in context, I guess. So yeah, I'll move on from there. So all general plans should have an implementation plan as part of the general plan. That's typically at the end of the general plan. Some of the items that are typically included in the implementation plan are is a table that identifies what the issue is, who is responsible for accomplishing that, and then what the outcome should be. So in the general plan update, we want to include an implementation plan so that we can measure how we're accomplishing our goals and how we're making progress on the general plan. There's also this map on the left-hand side. It's called the zoning alignment map, and I've seen this in a couple places. What it is it identifies the areas that already, so it's properties that it has the zoning, and then it compares it to the general plan. So it highlights properties that are either not complying with the general plan. So that would be the red areas. The yellow areas they're close to being aligned with the general plan, and then the green would be being aligned with the general plan. So there are some maps that can help us figure out, you know, how to move forward on implementing the general plan. So yeah, as part of the implementation plan, one of the things that we want our consultant group to help us with is educating the public about the general plan, and as well as staff members. It doesn't do a lot of good to adopt a general plan and then not have the people to push it forward and to implement the plan. So we want to make sure that everyone is well educated so we would include staff, appointed and elected officials as part of the training on the new general plan.
Let's ask, I don't feel like, and I could be wrong, we don't have anything like this matrix right now, do we? There's kind of
No.
goals, but I don't know of any other.
Yeah, each community plan has goals, and the elements, they have goals, but there's not necessarily an implementation portion of it. Mm-hmm.
Because I remember even in just reviewing one, it's like there was all these different numbers in there, but they didn't really match up. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's also the idea of creating a committee, an implementation committee, where you know, those regular meetings where we measure the progress as we move forward. So
I love it. I'm on
yeah.
board.
Okay. This is a kind of a different concept. It's called place-based approach, and this is a map that kind of shows the concept. So rather than saying, okay, this corridor should be commercial or this area should be residential, you identify areas as a neighborhood center. And so there are specific uses that would be allowed in a neighborhood center, or you designate an area as a regional center So it encourages housing, commercial, and job creation. So this is just a concept that we're also exploring. It looks at what is the character that we're trying to create within a certain part of Ogden? What should the scale of the development be? So that's just something that we're kind of exploring, but it takes a group effort. So as we move forward with the general plan, we will definitely be reaching out to all of you for your input. And we really want this to be a great opportunity for the citizens to come out and participate and contribute to the future of Ogden. So that's all I have.
When we'll skip over a couple slides. You want to do that at all? No.
All right, well, we're just after 6:15. Or so we should get you out of here by 6:30. So this part is not too long, but I just wanted to talk about the roles of some of the different groups that are involved. So the city staff, obviously, the planning commission is you all, the city council, and then of course the public. So since we have a couple of minutes, I'll not read that whole slide. So we'll start with the city staff. So in addition to the handsome devils that are shown in this picture here, doing a general plan really is going to require all the different staff. So everybody in the city, as Barton mentioned, the general plan is just land, right? And the problem with thinking of it as just land is that how we plan and how we use our land has an impact on absolutely everything else in the city. And so the reason we want all staff involved is because how we use our land dictates our water needs, our sewer needs, our storm water needs. Engineering standards, how we use our land has an impact on the financial health of the city, with emergency response, with what, police and fire need to respond. Just one quick story is when I was a planner in a different community, the city was really pushing for higher density and kind of taller buildings. And the fire chief kept saying, that's great, but I don't have a ladder truck. And so if you're going to zone this, you better give me $1 million for a ladder truck because I won't be able to respond to this. And so it really does take everybody and all the minds and all the disciplines to come together to make that happen, because there are so many parts that are connected that we don't think about. So it's not just land. The just land covers everything else in the city. So we need everybody. The planning commission. So these 2 bullet points are sort of the minimum. And I don't want to minimize what you all do because you all have such an important role in the planning process. But as far as state code, just the straight requirements, you're required to recommend the plan to the council and you're required to hold the legally required public hearing. But of course, you all do so much more than that. You work with the planners, you work with the public so much before that gets to the planning commissions or before it gets to the city council. So huge role that you guys have. When it does come to the city council, because it is a legislative document, the legislative body is required to adopt that, of course, and set the vision for the city. And I think as Brandon touched on a little bit, there are 4 required elements. The state code says you have to have at least these 4, but it also provides a list of 5 or 6 other things that say you can also have these other things. But then at the very end, it says, and anything else that you think that is important to you. So we can have all different kinds of sections. So, but these 4 are absolutely required. And then the public. And of course, what the public provides is really the vision and what they want the city to be. And so they provide this input on, the guidance for the vision itself, for their needs and desires and how they want the city to grow. But as we listen to the public, we really have to have this balanced approach because we have experts, we have engineers who understand what our water needs are and what our sewer needs are. And we have, like I say, emergency response who understand what those needs are. We have planners who understand the land use. There are experts and sometimes when you maybe anecdotally, but you want to ask what the public wants. And a lot of people are going to say, oh, I want no taxes and all single family housing. Right. And that's not really going to work in reality. And so we have to balance what they say they want and what people say they want their community to be with what some of the needs are that might be a little bit different than that. So it's really critical to have that balanced approach between the public and what they want and the experts that know some of the more, some of the issues in more detail than maybe some of the public would. So the opportunities for input. Obviously, as I mentioned, by state law, you could redo an entire general plan and only have to hold one public hearing. And, that might not be enough, and typically it's not. And so when you look at opportunities for public input and opportunities for the public to shape how a general plan comes together, it's really at every single level. So as these guys put together the general plan, there are going to be obviously open houses and surveys and public outreach opportunities and planning commission meetings where it may be the public hearing, but there may be other just public input opportunities. And so the public can really provide their feedback all throughout, but especially with the city staff as they're developing the plan, with the planning commission, obviously with the hearings that you all hold, and then with the city council as the plan hopefully gets more finalized and gets to a final place. And the one arrow that I didn't put on there, and Rich, you and Brandon kind of talked about it a little bit, is as much as we want to have these documents set in stone for 20 years, they're very much living documents. Times change and economic conditions change and needs change over a 20-year period. That's a really long time. And, you can have economic, great recessions, and you can have, booms, and you can have all kinds of things that are going to change the needs of a community. And sometimes we get development proposals that come in and it's something we hadn't thought about. And we thought, hey, that's a great idea. So it's worth re-looking at that general plan or the community plan because we hadn't thought about it or the opportunity really hadn't been there. And so there's going to be a line that, as it goes through, maybe I'll point this way, as it goes through, there's going to be a line that goes back, to the public input. It's always going back and forth. And so as we do the plan itself, as we do updates, this just is always there. There's always that feedback loop.
I have a question about that. I
Yep.
know that we've talked about it before, but I can't remember. What is kind of the best practice for when you revise the general plan?
Well, I think as Barton mentioned, and maybe if you want to take this, you can. I mean, there's a lifespan for a general plan. I mean, as Barton mentioned, usually about 20 years, but you could revisit every 10 years, or every 10, maybe 15 years and really look at it and think, do we need to do this sooner than later? Or is this still holding up fairly well? We have some of the community plans that are decades and decades old, from the 80s, that we haven't updated yet. And maybe this is a good opportunity to combine some of those or really to look at it and see if that's, worth it to have such a specific plan, have 14 plans in Ogden. So.
And just really quick, a lot of times if you receive a lot of proposals to amend the general plan, that's a sign that the general plan needs to be updated.
Yes,
Have we received a lot of requests to update general plan?
I don't know in my time here, but
Well, not really general, let's update this entire community plan. We do get things like I mentioned that they said, hey, I want to rezone this for commercial or rezone this for townhomes. And we looked at plans and said, no, it's a neighborhood commercial. If you wanted to do that, you really would need to do a general plan amendment. So we get 5, 6, 7 times a year, a request like that to change a specific area of the general plan to accommodate a specific zone change request.
so.
Any questions from you all that we can answer since we're all
I
sitting?
think one comment that I have is this is one of the most important times for the public to get involved.
Mhm.
Because if they have their input on the general plan, which kind of feeds into the land use regulations, that's their time to have their voice heard. I mean, if it comes to the point where the general plan is now approved The land use regulations have been amended and approved. When an application comes into the planning commission, especially if it's more of an administrative call, like a subdivision or a site plan, and the rules are already in place, the public really can't say much, because if, as long as it fits within the parameters of that law, it has to be approved. It's not something discretionary. They can't say, we don't really like the look of it, or we just don't think it's right in that area. If it fits within that zone, within that law, they can't deny it. So that's one of the reasons that at this point, the citizens should really be involved in this process from the beginning.
And just to add on that a little bit, if you remember, about 20 to 25 years ago, there were lots of communities that were dealing with the Walmart issue, right? If you remember that, there were communities who they didn't think a Walmart would ever come, and then there was a proposal to put a Walmart in, and they just, they didn't want the Walmart in their community, and they tried to stop it, and Walmart just said, "Hey, it's in your zoning ordinance. You can't stop it. It's too late." And a lot of those communities just never bothered to look and see what really could happen in their zoning ordinance. And so companies like that, Walmart in particular, just because that was kind of the poster child at the time, really took advantage of that. And it was too late. They, picketing outside the construction site was a little bit too late. It was already allowed in the zoning ordinance, and they really couldn't stop it. And a lot of communities learned a hard lesson with that, and they really went back and really understood that you need to plan for that, even if you don't know it's on the horizon, because once it's in your zoning ordinance, it's too late.
Geez, yeah, I mean, until I was on the council, I never looked at what the zoning was where I was buying property or had any concept of that. So this could be a good opportunity to communicate with people about that, because I feel like I say that to somebody at least once a month.
Yeah.
That's what it's in. I mean, they could do this there or whatever, It's a lot of education to a community about that.
And I think education is key to the success of what we all want and need to do. Because those who have been to planning commission meetings know we have people who come, the public, and they think that we have the power to change something or rewrite the ordinance or give permission for something that is not allowed in the ordinance. And so education is really important. What the public can do and they can talk all they want, but it may not make a difference because it's written this way and they want that.
And that education starts with engagement. So is there a plan that's being developed to actually reach out to the community and invite their engagement in this process so that we don't suffer whiplash later on?
Yeah, absolutely. We've just released the request for proposals for consultants to do the general plan update, and we've emphasized that this needs to be a very robust public involvement program. And so we will, as part of that work program, have many opportunities for public input in many different ways.
Great.
One thing I was a little bit concerned about is we do want a lot of public engagement. So we have an event tonight that's public engagement. We've had them with the on board Ogden, and we had them with other things. And I'm getting a little worried that we're over engaging. Maybe people will just check out, but they need to know the importance of this one in particular is something that's going to guide development for the whole city, which I think will make a difference. Then it's just like one each kind of idea too.
If I could chime in too, the city can do all of their outreach, but some people are a little bit deaf to what happens from the city and thinking it doesn't maybe apply to them. But if we all took an opportunity to post those kind of things on our social media pages and talk about it when we meet people, I think that send a more powerful message perhaps to some people that, hey, maybe this is for me to get involved in, and maybe it would be well if I told my neighbors to get involved too. I don't know that, the way these things are done, the way at least it was done 25 years ago, I was on that committee at that time. It's hard to overdo that, because of the way it's structured. You know, I mean, it's sticky notes and maps and things of that nature that kind of all get consolidated. And I don't know if that's what they're gonna do this time, but that's what we did 25 years ago. So, but anyway, getting people to those things, you know, as a council member, I want to know what people think. You know, it really matters. So, to get people to listen is a challenge, at least for me, and maybe for some of you too. So help to promote it, I think is what I'm saying.
I think if I could just add one thing, I mean, other than, you know, people up here wearing blue check shirts, you know, planning language isn't usually people's first language, you know, to your point and to Dave, your point, Rich, you know, it's really important for us to present this in a way that's understandable. And I think, you know, as Brandon mentioned, trying to get these plans consolidated, I think what we're doing with the Unified Development Code is going to make a huge difference. So people can understand it. It may not be their first language, but it needs to be presented in a way that people can understand. And, you know, you read a zoning ordinance, you're like, I have no idea what that means. And so hopefully it's not going to have any impact because I can't read it. But so it's really important for us to communicate that well. And I think we're doing a good job with that. I think both of these processes are going to be much improved from the old days of the past of sticky notes and, you know, really dry meetings and, you know, things like that.
And just remember with the Unified Development Ordinance, we are trying to time it so that when we do receive input from the public through the values surveys, through the scenario-based planning, that we can use that information to then inform the ordinance update.
So are there gonna be a lot of type of surveys they can do with technology? So they don't
Absolutely.
actually have to show up, because some are more likely to fill something out than to take a night off and go.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, our goal, sorry.
Oh, yeah, we want to be able to, someone pull out their phone and
Well,
give us input while they're sitting at waiting for pick up their kid or whatever.
Yeah, our goal is any public, I guess, open house that we provide, we want them to have a similar experience online. So
Okay.
we'll post the presentation, we'll provide the surveys, the poster boards will all be online so that they can have a similar experience and provide good feedback.
Good.
So,
Are those surveys anonymous or are they? Yeah.
You can choose, well, it kind of depends on how you set up the survey. You can make it anonymous or you can choose to provide your contact info. So it just
Could
depends.
we at least know what area they come from?
Well, that's kind of why I was.
Yeah, that
wondering
is helpful.
Yeah, I mean, some people might do it if they didn't have to put their name on it. Some other people might want to cram fill out the survey 100 times. But,
Yeah, so usually it's set up to where they can only respond on one computer. So if they were to change computers, they could do 2 surveys, but usually it's based on their IP address. Yep.
so my wife and I are stuck to one.
One strong voice.
Your
Yeah,
phone and
do a thumb war before you take the survey.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, chairs, I think we're 3 minutes over, so we can probably wrap it up if
Well, I
if
did
there
want
aren't
to
any
give
other
you a
questions.
little flag sticker. We're very excited about our new city flag, so I'll pass this around for the planning commissioners. We all have a sticker already, but thanks so much for your service. We really appreciate it. And I appreciate personally your expertise and guidance because this is definitely not my wheelhouse.
I hate to tell you, it's not ours
Yeah.
either.
I mean, I like the visioning and all that part,
the
but you all
public
can.
But we have good
Do the
leadership.
law.
We're great.
Yeah. And it's really exciting. I was in the Union Station Advisory Committee this morning and they're gonna be presenting 2 different concept plans this evening of, and they're just concepts, just ideas to get feedback from the public about the ways that the Union Station campus is coming along. So it's great.
That's great.
I got a message while we were here encouraging you, asking me to tell everybody to show up again.
Mhm.
Where's it at?
As many of us. From here to there if we can.
It's really exciting. The designs are really cool.
Great.
I need to call and adjourn. I don't know.
Yeah.
Move to adjourn.
You have a second? All in favor?
I-
Bye.
Any opposed? Well, thanks for inviting us.
Thanks, everyone.
I enjoy the times we get
Good
together.
time tonight.
Thanks, Marcia.
Thank you for dinner.
Yes. I love being fed. It's like